The Galactic Council chamber was quiet the day they summoned the human envoy. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of silence that weighed on your chest, that made you double-check your own heartbeat. Over 50 species filled the vast hall, each from an empire that had once crushed lesser civilizations with ease. They were used to fear, obedience, and surrender. But today, none of them looked smug. Not after what happened on Valor 9. The humans had finally answered back. Commander Reich stood alone in the center, dressed in that sharp, minimalist Earth military uniform. No gold, no medals, just matte black armor that didn't shine under the chamber's artificial light. He wasn't tall by Drav standards. He didn't have horns or gills or glowing skin, but every single eye in that room was on him. They were afraid. And he knew it. The Arxadian High Chancellor finally spoke, voice as dry and cold as the sands of his homeworld. You committed an unsanctioned military act against a sovereign system. Valor 9 was neutral space. Reich didn't blink. Neutral until the Tsar took it, until they started using civilians as living mines, until they buried children in energy fields and made humans dig them out with their bare hands. Casualties, the Chancellor said. The cost of conflict. We don't do cost of conflict, Reich said flatly. We do resolution. He wasn't a politician. He didn't dress up war with pretty language. He was born in the outer colonies, on a mining planet the Council never gave a damn about until it found a rich core of helium-7 under its crust. He'd watched his father lose both legs when a Council drone mistook him for an insurgent. His mother died waiting for a med drone that never came. So no, Reich didn't play games. Valor 9 was where everything changed. It started with the footage. A hacked feed from an orbital Tsar cruiser showed a human unit, battered and outnumbered, walking through a storm of plasma fire. They didn't run. They didn't retreat. One by one, they fell. But every death brought a dozen more Tsar with it. The final man, a grunt named Holloway, was filmed standing on a pile of alien corpses, bleeding from the gut, shouting Earth's anthem into a broken comm before he set off a core detonation that took out 4 enemy destroyers in orbit. That clip spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Not because of the explosion, but because of that face, bloody, broken and still smiling. Then came Earth's answer. The Council thought humans would appeal for peace, ask for aid, beg for Valor 9 back. Instead, Earth went dark. No transmissions, no diplomacy, no warnings. Then, 1 week later, they deployed what came to be known as the Dread Armada. It wasn't the size that shocked the Council, though it was massive. It was the design. Sleek, black steel. No banners, no signals, no identification marks. No one had ever seen these ships before. Not even the Terran allies in the Orion sectors. They didn't match Earth's public military specs. This wasn't just war. This was premeditated, silent rage. The first strike wasn't on a battlefield. It was on the Tsar homeworld. They didn't glass it. They dissected it. In 17 minutes, every satellite, every comm relay, every defense array vanished from Tsar space. Their military fleet was rendered inert with electromagnetic pulses so precise that not a single civilian structure was touched. Then, over a continuous 12-hour period, every major Tsar general was executed, some in orbit, some in their homes, all with a single bullet to the head. No Earth troops were seen, no official messages were sent. And then, the humans released a transmission to the rest of the galaxy. We never wanted war, but we won't die quiet. You wanted to see our power? This is just the edge of it. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Empires that had fought for centuries paused their campaigns. Border skirmishes dried up overnight. even the notoriously violent Tressarians ordered their fleet to stand down until further notice. Back in the council chamber, the High Chancellor shifted uneasily. "Your methods are excessive." Reich gave him a stare cold enough to crack metal. That was restraint. And for the first time in centuries, 50 empires understood one thing very clearly. You don't push Earth unless you're ready to bury planets. Outside the council chamber, the stars burned quiet. But beneath that stillness, war drums were echoing across systems, rumbling in secret bunkers, reverberating in empty war halls, muttering through encrypted comms. Every empire had the same question now. How the hell did humans hide that kind of firepower? The answer wasn't in some miracle weapon. It was in the way Earth had been ignored. For too long. On Earth, they called it the Hollow Doctrine, named after Private Holloway, the man who blew himself and 4 enemy ships into cosmic dust. But the doctrine had been written decades before him, in shadow, in Cold War rooms buried miles underground, in simulations run by AI systems labeled too dangerous to remain sentient. Humanity hadn't built this military to conquer. They built it because they knew they'd be conquered someday. And they were right. The first contact with the Galactic Council hadn't been a peaceful handshake. It was a demand. Earth had resources, strategic locations, and a population dumb enough to worship the idea of peace. The Council offered integration. That meant heavy taxes, military recruitment, and slow erasure of sovereignty. Most humans agreed. But not all. Commander Reich was still standing in the center of the chamber when the High Chancellor called for adjournment. The delegates were nervous, claws twitching, tendrils coiling, mandibles clicking. Reich didn't flinch. He knew the silence that followed blood. It wasn't peace. It was fear, pretending to be reason. When he walked out, his boots echoed like gunfire. A young Arcanide reporter, a race known for their grotesque politeness, tried to approach him. "Commander, if I may ask, what is Earth's final intention? Occupation? Domination? Retaliation?" Reich paused just long enough for the camera drones to focus. "Balance," he said, "and if we can't get that, we'll settle for revenge." On the outer rim of Council space, 50 light-years from Valor 9, General Taggart stood on the bridge of the Eidolon, Earth's flagship, cloaked, quiet, and orbiting a Council-registered gas giant. Taggart was a legend in the shadows. No medals, no parades, just a black file that most Earth generals weren't even cleared to read. He'd commanded the Oblivion units, the kind of black ops that made people disappear from history. His face was lean, battle-carved, and the left side of his skull was wrapped in synth bone from a plasma blast he'd survived during the Shenzhou mutiny. "Sir, the Zovari are shifting fleets toward Neutral Zone 7, his comms officer said. "Looks like they're preparing a counter-presence." Taggart gave a short nod. "Let them move. Just mark every flagship's heat signature." "Should we scramble Ghost Unit?" He didn't look up. "Number, we don't waste elite units on warning shots." He turned to his weapons officer. "Power up the Banshee cannons. Load silence rounds." "Sir, those are untraceable rounds. They'll never know who fired." "That's the point," Taggart muttered. "They're not supposed to know. They're supposed to wonder." Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood had shifted from fear to fury. News feeds that once played alien entertainment now looped Holloway's final broadcast. Recruit numbers tripled overnight. Young men, miners, mechanics, farmers, lined up for selection trials. Earth didn't need soldiers born for war. They needed men willing to burn everything to make sure it never happened again. Underground, the old vaults were opened. Projects sealed away because they were too aggressive, too lethal, or too human. Things like the Rage Protocol, neurological enhancements that linked adrenaline spikes to near-instant tactical prediction, designed to make a man see 10 kills ahead. Or the Echo clones, copies of fallen soldiers built from DNA and trauma-mapped memories, unstable but unstoppable for 72 hours before they self-destructed. Some of the men chosen for deployment hadn't been born in hospitals. They were vat-grown in silence, raised on war simulations, never knew a mother, never had a laugh. Now they had orders. One of them, Operator Ward, had never spoken outside mission code. His birth ID was erased, his kill count, unconfirmed but rumored to be in the thousands. He was deployed to Drex 4, a council-controlled outpost notorious for processing captured humans, meaning torture until compliance. Ward didn't enter through the gates. He dropped from orbit, solo. By the time Council surveillance drones reacted, the entire outpost had gone dark. What little footage survived showed figures writhing in the dark, trying to escape their own shadows before their throats were slit in silence. No explosions, no grand speeches, just surgical erasure. Back in Council headquarters, panic set in. Empires that once scoffed at Earth were now holding emergency defense meetings. Half of them didn't even believe humans had this capacity. The other half were wondering if they'd be next. A few tried diplomacy. Earth didn't respond. They weren't trying to be understood anymore. They were delivering a message. For centuries, the galaxy saw Earth as sentimental, weak, a planet of soft flesh and emotional minds. They forgot what happens when emotional minds decide they're done losing. Reich met with General Taggart on board the Eidolon 2 days after the council session. "You want to talk escalation?" Taggart asked, not looking up from his holomap. "You think we're moving too fast?" "No," Reich said, lighting a cigarette. "I think we're being too kind." Taggart cracked a smile. "You've changed?" "Watching your people get burned alive by a species that sees them as insects tends to do that." "What do you want?" Reich exhaled smoke slowly. "Authorization to launch Ashfall." Taggart's eyes narrowed. It was a cultural virus, a digital payload that could corrupt an entire civilization's archives, rewriting history, erasing memories, turning proud empires into paranoid wrecks with no past and no unity. It was psychological genocide. "You sure?" "They want to unmake us," Reich said. "Let them see what it feels like to lose everything that made them a people." 3 days later, the Akari Empire woke up to find their entire planetary database replaced by Earth propaganda. Historical timelines were rewritten, great Akari leaders replaced with images of Holloway and Reich, ancient wars repainted with human victories, their religious texts digitally infected with Earth's anthem, now looped under sacred verses. They rioted, they questioned everything, and Earth watched from orbit saying nothing. No boots on the ground, no bullets, just collapse. Across the stars, the word human changed. It stopped meaning weak or emotional. It became synonymous with wrath. Not rage, not madness. Cold, tactical wrath. The kind of fury that doesn't scream, it plots. That doesn't lash out, it learns your soft spots and bleeds you with a needle. The kind of wrath that hides under kindness for centuries, then explodes. In the old days, the Galactic Council would have assembled a coalition. Now, they were too busy reinforcing their borders and whispering in fear. Because humans weren't asking for respect anymore. They were taking it. A Tressarian warlord named Kor finally broke silence. A seasoned killer with a fleet of 40 dreadnoughts and a body count longer than his lifespan. He went live on open galactic frequency. "Earth," he growled, "you're nothing but smoke and threats. Come face me. I'll burn your planet." He expected a reply in days. He got one in 2 minutes. A simple transmission from Earth Command. Your coordinates are confirmed. Do not blink. 6 minutes later, Project Phantasm was activated. A single ship, cloaked with gravitational interference tech, slipped into the warlord's fleet. Not a missile was fired. Instead, every dreadnought lost oxygen simultaneously. Flesh froze. Lights dimmed. Power vanished. The Tressarian fleet floated silently. 40 dead machines in perfect orbit. The warlord's body was found hanging upside down from his own bridge, throat slit, eyes burned out. Pinned to his chest was a patch from Holloway's unit. Back on Earth, the night skies no longer hosted fireworks. They hosted silent drills, low-orbit launch tests, kinetic railguns tested over oceans. The people were tired, yes, but not afraid. Not anymore. A new culture had taken root. War-informed peace. Men spoke in short, deliberate sentences. Young recruits learned alien biology like anatomy students. Mothers taught their sons not just how to walk and read, but how to survive vacuum exposure, how to fire from cover, how to encrypt their screams. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about permanence. Earth wasn't just defending itself now. It was laying the foundation for never being prey again. And far beyond known space, in the darkest sectors of the void, ancient beings that had watched the rise and fall of empires turned their eyes toward Earth. For the first time in ages, something new had entered the galactic game. Not just another species. Not another empire. A message in human blood. We remember everything, and we forgive nothing. General Taggart stood in the command vault beneath Mount Artemis, surrounded by steel, shadow, and silence. The walls weren't polished like in council ships. They were scarred. Black scorch marks from old drills, cracks from pressure tests that nearly shattered the underground facility. This was a place born from necessity, not pride. A relic from the early days of the silent doctrine. The table in front of him projected 23 planetary maps. Not one of them belonged to Earth. Humanity wasn't fighting for its land anymore. It was now fighting for dominance of the void. He zoomed in on a cluster of red markers near the Eridan Fold. The Malkath Coalition, a loosely bound set of reptilian merchant states, had begun amassing ships near Terran-friendly trade zones. Typical Council playbook. They'd stay neutral while nudging others to bleed for them. Then they'd crawl in to claim the scraps when the smoke cleared. Taggart knew the type. Cowards with coin. He tapped a single marker. Flag their comm relay. I want ghost units watching their encryption protocols. Already inside, his comms tech replied. They've been copying Earth signals, trying to reverse engineer Dreadfleet frequency hopping. Let them think they're winning, Taggart said, and when they broadcast their false signal, I want their flagship broadcasting coordinates of every Malkath trade station, open band. You want to bait the pirates? I want to invite them. Meanwhile, Commander Reich returned to Earth for the first time in 7 years. He didn't land at a port. He touched down in Sector 12, one of the outer colonies that had lost nearly 60% of its population during the early Council raids. What was left wasn't beautiful. Cracked pavement, scorch marks, wind whistling through half-burned buildings, and silence that screamed louder than any explosion. A small boy stood at the edge of the runway as Reich stepped out. He had dirt on his face and a rusted toy rifle in his hand, held like he knew how to use it. You're him, the boy said. The man who burned Valor. Reich didn't respond. They said you're the one who made them run. They didn't run, Reich muttered. They just backed up to reload. The boy squinted. Will they come back? Reich knelt. Only once. Why? Because next time, Reich said, we won't leave anyone breathing long enough to run again. Across the galaxy, humans were becoming a ghost story. A Varnathi freighter reported spotting a Terran specter on the outer rim, what appeared to be a single black ship floating silently in a debris field, untouched by radiation storms, unscanned by sensors. When they approached, their systems went offline. Every crew member blacked out. When they woke, their jump drives were removed. No violence, no ransom, just neutralization. Word spread like wildfire. Don't enter Terran space uninvited. You might leave with your lungs, but not your engines. And then came the Slipknot incident. The Zovari Empire, still bitter over the loss of a border colony, deployed a test fleet of 20 stealth cruisers toward Luna, the Earth's moon. Their plan wasn't invasion. It was humiliation. A demonstration. They intended to cut the moon's dark side with thermal drills, carve their insignia into it using orbital lasers. A quiet message to Earth's skies. They never made it past the asteroid belt. One by one, their ships disappeared. No explosions. No transmissions. Just vanishing. 3 days later, a package was delivered to the Zovari War Council via encrypted warp tether. Inside, 20 helmets, still dripping. The council demanded answers again. They called for a ceasefire. They offered talks. Earth declined. Diplomacy was what Earth tried when it was weak. Now, they didn't need permission. For centuries, the galactic empires believed power was measured in fleets, in trade routes, in the number of systems flying your banner. Humans had changed the equation. Power, now, was the ability to make a room full of empires go silent the moment a Terran officer walked in. On the edge of neutral space, Operator Ward stood inside a burning cathedral on Drellis 4, watching pillars collapse in slow motion as Council loyalists screamed under rubble. This had been a cultural archive, one of the last strongholds of Council-approved education. It had rewritten human history, sanitized the occupation, and taught generations that Earth's pain was necessary integration. Ward planted a hollow record in the ash. A boy, burned face, screaming, then silence, a reminder. You erased our past, the recording said, so we're erasing yours. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Defense Secretariat convened for a covert session. The Hollow Doctrine had entered Phase 3. Not survival. Not warning. Decimation. General Taggart addressed the room. Stone-faced, unshaven, voice sharp. They still think we're reacting, he said. They still think this is backlash, retaliation, emotion. He pulled up a star map. 200 systems highlighted in crimson. We're not reacting, he said. We're restructuring the galaxy, permanently. From this moment forward, if a non-human vessel crosses these zones, they disappear. No warning, no burial, no exceptions. A young analyst asked, "What about diplomacy?" Taggart stared at him like he was made of paper. Diplomacy died at Valor. In a forgotten sector near the Broken Rim, the Raveran Swarm, an insectoid species that never joined the Council, activated their hibernation ships, sensing shifts in gravity wells and FTL waves. They didn't speak in words. They communicated in heat and vibration. But even they recognized the new pattern. Predator ascendant. They turned back toward their own space, sealing their borders with a single swarm-wide vibration. Do not approach the fire. Earth's influence spread in shadows. Entire black markets collapsed overnight as Terran AI hunted down slaver networks, uploading kill commands into drone fleets. Former allies of the Council began defecting quietly, sending encrypted apologies and trade offers. And in underground forums across alien systems, one phrase kept resurfacing: "Fear the Hollow Men." Commander Reich received word that a group of Terran sympathizers had been captured on Varnathi 3, stripped, tortured, and scheduled for execution in the city square. He didn't request a council hearing. He didn't file a report. He sent 6 men. That night, a thunderstorm hit Varnathi 3. The next morning, the square was empty. No bodies, no guards, no sign of conflict. Only a banner hanging from the governor's tower. Black cloth. White symbol. The same patch Holloway had worn. Underneath it, in scrawled alien dialect, "Justice doesn't ask. It takes." And still, Earth refused to make demands. They didn't beg for peace. They didn't ask for seats on the council. They didn't fly flags. Because now Earth didn't need recognition. They had something better, a reputation, a myth wrapped in bone and plasma fire. A story mothers told their young not to provoke. A silence in the void that didn't mean safety. It meant they were watching. At the edge of the known galaxy, inside an ancient ring world believed to be dead, an AI once built to catalog advanced civilizations reactivated. Its purpose was simple: observe dominant species. After reviewing 94 billion terabytes of footage, records, and signals over the last 6 months, it submitted a report. Dominant species observed: humanity. Characteristics: adaptive, vengeful, unpredictable, capable of extinction-level retaliation. Conclusion: avoid engagement. Recommend galactic reclassification. New classification: apex predators. And just like that, for the first time in galactic history, the species that once called themselves last in the food chain were now at the top. The black site known as Kern Vault 17 wasn't on any map, not even Earth's. Carved into the hollow of a dead moon, shielded by anti-scan alloys and cloaked with gravitational displacers, it was built long before humanity had joined the Galactic Council. Back when Earth's leaders still believed they could avoid war by preparing for the worst kind. Inside Vault 17, things were always cold. Not from temperature, but from silence. The people stationed here didn't laugh. They didn't drink. They didn't joke about the enemy. There was no enemy here, only projects, experiments labeled by Greek letters and death counts. Today, Project Sigma was waking up. Dr. Harold Naves was a civilian, in name only. He'd been pulled from MIT before he'd even finished his dissertation, handed a black badge, and told one thing: "You're no longer a scientist. You're a sword." He stood now in front of Sigma's containment unit, thick black glass, humming with electromagnetic locks. Inside stood a man, or what used to be a man. Sigma 9. No real name, no history. Born and built for one reason: interspecies warfare under asymmetrical threat conditions. He could see in 3 spectrums, breathe in chemical vapors. His reflexes registered faster than light lag across comms. His bones were reinforced with synthetic alloys. His nerves were fused with reactive microgel that let him feel pain, but never enough to stop. Dr. Naves tapped the glass. The thing inside opened its eyes. "Sigma," he said calmly, "you're being deployed. Target? The Malketh Assembly. They've started cloning human POWs. Objective? An example." Sigma nodded once. No questions. No emotion. Just execution on legs. Elsewhere, Commander Reich stood aboard the ESS Crucible, the ship that served as a forward command base near the Tressarian border. The Crucible wasn't sleek or fast. It was old, armored, built like a floating tank. It carried 30,000 men and enough kinetic payload to crack a moon in half. But Reich wasn't thinking about firepower. He was thinking about what came after. For months, Earth had been retaliating, erasing, executing. Now it was time to reshape. He pulled up a list of council-controlled territories. Too many of them had human populations treated like indentured workers, labeled probationary citizens. No rights, no voice, just quotas and punishments. Taggart had proposed launching orbital strikes on these worlds. Reich had a different idea. On the world of Geros 5, humans lived underground in converted mining tunnels. The planet's atmosphere was rich in helium-3, and the Council ran thousands of extractors above the surface, manned by aliens, overseen by armed drones. The humans weren't even allowed sunlight. Their children were born without ever seeing the sky. So when the drones started exploding mid-patrol, when the alien overseers started vanishing into ventilation shafts, the Council thought it was sabotage. Then, the message came. Broadcast over every screen, every loudspeaker. You do not own them anymore. And from the horizon, human drop pods fell like thunder. Reich didn't order a siege. He ordered a liberation, but not the kind the Council expected. No cheers, no flags. This was methodical. One zone at a time. Every Council bunker cracked open with thermal lances. Every administrator dragged out and made to kneel in front of the humans they'd starved. The execution squads wore no insignia, no names, only black visors and a white patch across their chest. Hollow. Some begged. Some offered deals. None were spared. The message was simple. You enslaved humans for centuries. We only need hours to make you extinct. Back on Earth, political factions began to emerge. Some wanted to pull back, consolidate. Others wanted full-scale expansion, not just war, dominion. General Taggart sat in a subterranean briefing room, surrounded by brass and veterans, all scarred, all cold-eyed. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he leaned forward. If we stop now, we lose this momentum, and they'll never fear us again. The only reason Earth is safe is because they think we're monsters. He paused. We stop being monsters, we start digging graves again. A younger officer asked, So what's the plan? Taggart looked at the star map, then smiled. We give them hell, one solar system at a time. Sigma 9 was deployed on Raxor Theta, where the Malkath were hiding their illegal cloning facility deep in a canyon fortress. He didn't drop with a fleet. He arrived inside a coffin-shaped drone, no larger than a torpedo, launched from deep space. He landed silently in a maintenance vent. The slaughter began at 2:14 a.m. local time. By 3 a.m., the air filtration system was spewing blood mist. By 3:10, the facility's lights flickered with every body that hit the floor. Sigma didn't use plasma. He didn't talk. He just moved, faster than their eyes could register, shutting down hearts, snapping spines, using scalpels when bullets were too noisy. When he reached the main chamber, where dozens of cloned human children floated in cryotanks, he did not weep. He activated the torch. None of them would live as slaves, and when he left one Malkath alive. Only one, burned, bleeding, and hanging from a steel hook, so he could tell them what walked in the shadows now. Reich received the mission report in encrypted format. He didn't forward it, didn't discuss it with high command. He simply closed the file, exhaled, and whispered, Good. But not everyone in the galaxy was hiding. The Dravari Dominion, long considered the most militarized species outside the Council, sent a message directly to Earth. Not a warning, not a threat, an offer. Joint operations, resource sharing, military technology exchange. They had watched Earth raise its enemies, and instead of opposing them, they wanted to join. Taggart reviewed the terms, then burned the message. He didn't need allies. He needed the galaxy to understand its place. And then came the first real pushback. The Council, tired of watching its members fall, gathered its remaining war fleets, 8 empires, 370 ships, 9 dreadnoughts, thousands of elite shock troops, all headed for one target, Mars. The red planet had been Earth's military forge for decades, producing weapon-grade alloys, drone factories, and human-born starfighter pilots. They believed if they hit Mars, they could cripple Earth's war machine. They didn't understand Mars wasn't the factory. It was the bait. As the fleet entered Mars' orbit, Earth's systems went dark again. Same as before. No transmissions, no warning. The Council fleet initiated landing protocol. That's when the Martian surface opened up. Not a volcano. A weapon. Project Leviathan, a rail cannon embedded in the crust, capable of firing tungsten rods at near relativistic speeds. They never saw it coming. Each rod struck with such force, it didn't just penetrate shields, it tore holes in time-delayed matter. Ships ripped in half like paper. The dreadnoughts tried to escape. Only one made it out of range. And as it limped away, Earth's final transmission hit. Do not confuse restraint with weakness. That was our second strike. You do not survive the third. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council disbanded Emergency Command. There were no volunteers left. No empires willing to risk their core systems. Even the scavengers stopped looting the dead zones. Because they knew. Humans weren't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to rewrite the chain of command in the galaxy. And this time, they weren't asking anyone's permission. Space had been quiet for weeks. Not peaceful, just quiet. That haunted, post-carnage kind of silence that comes when no one knows who's still alive, and nobody wants to find out. Humanity had gone dark again. No transmissions, no diplomatic replies, no visible fleet movements. The Council empires assumed Earth was licking its wounds after the failed Martian invasion attempt. They were wrong. Earth wasn't retreating. It was baiting. Somewhere in the ruins of the 4th Orion Drift, a single Terran stealth vessel floated through the remnants of what had once been a Varnathi mining colony. It looked derelict, lights out, hull scratched, leaking radiation. It was neither dead nor alone. Inside, Operator Grant sat motionless in the cockpit. Hardened combat veteran. Ex-Marine. One eye lost in the Valor siege, replaced with a neural lens that twitched every time he blinked. The kind of man who never needed a second chance, because he never made a first mistake. He was here to do what Earth did best now. Make an example. The Varnathi hadn't just supported the Council. They'd offered Earth's location to pirate raiding parties. 5 Earth cargo convoys, civilian, had gone missing in the last month. Bodies floated in vacuum, burned, peeled open, vented for entertainment. The Varnathi called it discipline. Earth called it provocation. Operator Grant's mission was simple. Reach Station Dalarex, the Varnathi pirate coordination hub, and erase every living thing inside. But this time, it wasn't about fear. It was about reputation. He docked without resistance. Dalarex wasn't a military installation. It was more like a floating city, built on greed and overconfidence. Hundreds of docking bays, thousands of inhabitants, alien scum packed into tight corridors, trading slaves, weapons, even black market clones of Terran soldiers. He walked through the entrance bay like a ghost. No armor, just black fatigues and gloves soaked in grip gel. His firearm. Custom manufactured. A Terran Phase M6. Silent, multi-load, overcharged. Carried only by licensed executioners. The guards didn't look twice. They should have. The first bullet didn't go into a guard's head. It went into a merchant, the one selling a young Terran girl in chains, auctioning her like a prize pet. Grant didn't shoot the customer. He sawed him in half with a thermal blade. 10 seconds later, the corridor went red with alarms. Too late. The killing had already started. There was no music to it, no glamour, just wet sounds, steel on bone, plasma sizzling through flesh. Operator Grant didn't run. He walked, room to room, cold and precise. He didn't shoot twice. He never shouted. He didn't want fear. He wanted the Varnathi to die in confusion, not understanding how one human walked into their fortress and dismantled it floor by floor. A riot broke out on the central promenade as mercs scrambled for their weapons. Grant walked into the crowd and threw a concussion grenade at his own feet, then started shooting through the smoke. 18 minutes later, Dalarex's command hub was in flames. 237 bodies lay strewn across walkways, vents, bulkheads, docking bays. The final transmission from the station wasn't a warning. It was a question. "Who are you?" Operator Grant said nothing. He carved the word hollow into the command desk and walked out. Back on Earth, the mission report was delivered directly to General Taggart. He read it in silence. No emotion, no pause. Then handed it to the next junior officer without comment. "What do we do next, sir?" the young man asked. Taggart took a long drag from his cigarette. "Next," he said, "we bury the heart of the Council." The heart wasn't a city. It wasn't a planet. It was a machine. Hidden inside a ringed gas giant, protected by graviton fields and a cloaked moon system, was the Central Authority Core, the AI system that stored every Council archive, every ruling, every protocol and law the empires had signed over the past 5 centuries. Taggart didn't want to destroy it. He wanted to rewrite it. The team for the mission was pulled from the darkest corners of Earth's black files. Codename: Black Vault. 5 operators, no ranks, no serial numbers. Not even Earth Command knew their full faces. They didn't fly in. They were injected, slingshotted from a dead comet to slip past gravity fields using nothing but radiation drift and silent suits. They landed on the ring's dark side and burrowed in. Inside, the core was defended by sentient mechs, Council-engineered enforcers with self-repair protocols and combat reflexes sharper than light. Didn't matter. The Black Vault team didn't fire loud. They used shock-skin rounds, bullets that pulsed energy inside the target's internal systems before shattering into invisible shrapnel. The mechs didn't explode. They collapsed in mid-step. No alarms, just death. Inside the AI chamber, the Council's god brain flickered to life, projecting 1,000 diplomatic voices at once. "You are breaching an intergalactic peace protocol. Your actions are criminal by multi-empire law. Humanity will face coordinated retaliation." The leader of Black Vault spoke only once. New protocol. He uploaded a data packet labeled HOLLOW, and just like that, every archive, every law, every founding document of the Council was replaced. Galactic law now recognized Earth not as a member, but as a sovereign military enforcer. All Council policies that excluded Terran voices were now nullified. Every legal claim against Earth? Void. Across the galaxy, systems crashed, embassies froze, treaties collapsed, and when the Council tried to send a broadcast to reclaim control, they found their words redirected, their own faces, their own threats, scrambled and replaced with a grainy black and white image of Holloway, smiling through blood. And the message: "You forgot us. Now you'll remember." Commander Reich watched the galaxy spiral into chaos, and he felt no satisfaction. Only clarity. Earth wasn't just feared now. It was obeyed. Empires that once sent demands now sent tributes. Alien monarchs knelt before humans they once enslaved. Old Council allies offered strategic marriages, shared defense zones, desperate contracts, and Earth refused everyone. They weren't here to share the throne. They were burning it down. Operator Ward returned from the burned zone with more than blood on his hands. He'd found something inside the ruins of an old council research lab, a list of unauthorized Terran experiments. Hundreds of human subjects, names, coordinates, clones, still alive, still being tested, still screaming. He brought it to General Taggart in person. The old general stared at the screen, jaw tight, eyes burning. How many? Too many? You sure? Ward nodded. I counted them one by one. Taggart stood slowly. No more delays. What's the plan? Taggart lit his cigarette and whispered, extinction. And just like that, Earth's doctrine shifted again. No more warnings, no more balance. The new orders were burned into every operative's neural net. No mercy, no prisoners, no debate. If they raise a hand, they lose the arm. If they raise a fleet, they lose a world. If they touch a human again, we erase them from the stars. Galactic historians would one day say this was the moment everything changed. Not when Earth fired its first retaliatory shot. Not when the Dread Fleet rose. Not even when Holloway died. But here, when Earth stopped fighting for peace and started fighting to dominate memory itself. They weren't just rewriting the maps. They were rewriting what it meant to matter in the universe. And far out, in the silence of an uncharted system, a dying AI recorded one final entry before going dark. They called themselves human, but what walks now is something else, something colder, something inevitable. The planet Avanthul had once been the pride of the Council's Cultural Harmony Initiative, a place where select species were trained, indoctrinated, and bred into obedient satellites. It had spires that touched the clouds, and an academy where non-human children learned a carefully edited version of history that made Earth out to be unstable, emotional, reckless. The humans on Avanthul didn't get to speak for themselves. They scrubbed floors, hauled supply crates, fixed waste valves. They were never shown the stars, only told about how their planet was saved by the Council. The word slave was never used in public. But everyone knew. Then the skies turned black. Not from a storm, from orbiting Terran shadows. The ESS Nix, a stealth carrier from Earth's Black Fleet, dropped into low orbit. No warning, no signal, no announcement. The planetary defense network, Council designed, didn't even register the ship's presence. Then came the jamming field. Every comm tower, every net node, every sensor. Silence. It lasted 6 minutes. Then the screaming started. The people of Avanthul woke to fire in the skies. Not bombs, light pulses, flashing in rapid succession across every visible direction. Morse code. Terran soldiers were here, not to ask, to judge. On the ground, Captain Jules Moran led Strike Unit 27 through the Eastern Quadrant. These weren't fresh recruits. They were hardened men, each carrying the look of someone who had lost too much to forget. Moran moved like a man whose orders weren't written in ink, but in blood. Their mission was classified as correction. In reality, it was a coordinated purge of Council-aligned faculty, enforcers, and political handlers who had systematically erased Earth's history from every file, classroom, and archive. They didn't fire on civilians. They didn't need to. Because when the Council's flag burned from the central tower and the first overseer's body was nailed to the outer wall, the message was clear. Earth has not forgotten. And now, neither will you. Meanwhile, Commander Reich stood aboard the Crucible's command deck, watching the feed in real time. He didn't blink as one by one, zones turned green. Each symbol meant another execution carried out. Another council rat silenced. Another false history lesson burned in the street. A junior officer approached him. "Sir, Council broadcast centers in the Grell sector are trying to spin this. They're saying Earth's turning into a rogue state, a terrorist force." Reich turned, eyes like frozen steel. "Good," he said. "Let them choke on their lies. They had their chance to call us allies. Now they can call us nightmares." Elsewhere in the Velkar system, the Dravari Dominion, the same race that had once offered alliance, were now facing something far worse. Not fire, not war, absence. All of their planetary AI systems, trade logs, medical indexes, genetic catalogs, vanished, not deleted, extracted. It wasn't a weapon. It was Earth's Project Wraith, a digital infiltration ghost code capable of entering encrypted systems and replacing identity markers with Terran ones. Every Dravari citizen woke up registered as Terran property. Even their warships identified Earth as their new central command. And when the Dravari High War Council tried to respond, their emergency meeting was broadcast to every outer system, showing them arguing, crying, breaking ranks. And above the footage, "This is what fear looks like," signed HOLLOW. The message wasn't military, it was psychological domination, and it was working. Across the stars, empires began pulling back, border patrols dropped to minimum, alien diplomats resigned or defected, pirate guilds dissolved themselves overnight. Worlds that had long mocked Earth now flew neutral banners, hoping it would keep them from being noticed. But it didn't matter. Earth wasn't just looking for revenge anymore. It was looking for compliance. On Derek 3, a neutral planet used as a trade post for dozens of minor species, a massive mural was painted overnight. No one saw who did it, but it covered 6 city blocks, black and white. One face, Holloway's face, with the words, "You laughed while we bled. Now we smile while you burn." General Taggart had returned to Earth, not for rest, not for celebration, but to initiate the next phase. He stood in a war room deep beneath the polar ice cap, where Earth kept its last resort plans, ideas drafted in the early years of the Council's betrayal. There were 3 folders on the table. Exodus Purge Rewrite. He picked up Rewrite. Inside were plans to establish permanent Earth-controlled history stations across key Council systems, truth centers that would replace centuries of propaganda with footage, memories, pain. They wouldn't just teach history. They'd force it down the throats of every generation to come. Meanwhile, Operator Ward had arrived on Falosh Prime, a seat of Council academia where generations had been taught that Earth was unstable, too dangerous to be trusted with independent authority. He didn't bring troops. He brought proof. Ward broadcast Earth's suppressed history directly into the planetary education systems. Images of concentration camps, breeding labs, vanished colonies. Children screamed, teachers cried, and when the Council tried to override the feed, Ward activated the final layer. Their own words. Every lie they'd ever spoken was overlaid on screen, contradicted by footage, audio, blood, bone. Then Ward's voice, calm and cold. "This is what your heroes look like. We're here to remove their statues." Back in orbit, Reich authorized a full blackout of Falosh's power grid. He didn't want them dead. He wanted them to sit in the dark and listen to the sound of their false world shattering. And in the outer reaches, something strange began to happen. New civilizations, ones Earth had never met, started sending recordings. No weapons, no threats, just messages. They were confessions. Alien leaders admitting their part in past Council atrocities, offering reparations, swearing neutrality, offering technology, slaves, even their own lives if Earth would simply pass them by. Humanity had become more than a superpower. It had become a catalyst for fear-shaped diplomacy. And not because of politics, because Earth had proved one terrifying thing. They do not stop. the Galactic Council, what was left of it, gathered one last time. 12 empires remained, all terrified, all bleeding. They didn't even argue anymore. They agreed on one thing. Earth could not be controlled, only avoided. So they drafted the Terran Isolation Pact, a desperate policy that banned any Council-aligned species from contact with Earth under penalty of exile. They made Earth a ghost state, too dangerous to engage, too powerful to oppose. And still, Earth said nothing, didn't respond, didn't acknowledge the treaty. Because Earth didn't care about permission. They were rewriting the terms of survival. And in the old sectors, where ruins of enslaved Terran colonies still floated, new beacons were activated. Not distress beacons, lighthouses, each one broadcasting the same message. We were silenced. Now we speak. Come and listen to the truth, or burn in the dark like the rest. Signed, Humanity. The Council Worlds called it the Silence Era, not because there were no wars, but because no one dared to speak about the war Earth had won. Their archives avoided Terran mentions. Their schools skipped the Holloway broadcast. Their public networks filtered words like Reich, Taggart, Hollow, Nix, Crucible, Ward. But silence, like pressure, builds, and eventually it bursts. In the dead zone of Astra Thur, once a thriving communications hub for Council media, there remained only rubble and quiet transmission nodes. But one node had survived, buried in rock, shielded by happenstance. And that one transmitter, after years of static, came alive. A single, shortwave audio message pulsed across every corner of the galaxy. We warned you once. You made us scream. Now we speak louder than ever. This is not war. This is correction. Earth within hours, 25 unaligned species began sending encrypted pleas to Earth's closest known relay. Not apologies. Submissions. Commander Reich watched the reports from the ESS Crucible's cold observation deck. Eyes shadowed, arms folded. The galaxy was buckling. Not from orbital strikes or scorched cities, but from the weight of truth humanity had forced it to face. Earth had stopped trying to be understood. They had made it clear, understand us or fall beneath us. The next step was continuity. Reich called in a secure session with General Taggart. We've broken them, Reich said plainly. Taggart stared through a thick haze of smoke from the cigarette clenched between his teeth. Not enough. Reich tilted his head slightly. You want a clean sweep? Taggart shook his head. We already did that. He leaned forward. I want something worse. I want them to depend on us. Project Dominion had existed only as a theory before the war. A strategic doctrine built not on conquest but on dependence. Control not through violence, but vitality. Supply chains, infrastructure, power grids. Earth didn't just want to destroy the empires, it wanted to replace their gods. The plan began in subtle waves. Earth's encrypted satellites reactivated near Velari Tau, a neutral world crippled by the post-council blackout. They offered power relays, unhackable, radiation-shielded, self-repairing. Velari Tau accepted. Within 3 days, all their critical systems ran through Terran nodes. Their first message back was simple. We see now. You are not the enemy. You are the storm. Then came the medical stations. Earth deployed AI-driven trauma ships to war-torn planets, offering healing tech centuries beyond anything the Council had ever approved for Terran use. Wounded soldiers, once dying in backwater trenches, now stood again. Amputees returned to battle with mechanical limbs that pulsed with nerve-linked adrenaline, but each recipient had a condition embedded in their implants. Obedience, one wrong broadcast, one anti-Earth signal, one whisper of rebellion. And the implants shut down permanently. On the galaxy's edge, Operator Ward led a covert strike on Council Archive Theta, one of the last hidden repositories of anti-Terran propaganda. It was guarded by a species known for stealth, the Drenkai, blind but capable of echolocation and memory-scent imprinting. Ward didn't bring explosives. He brought a sound weapon, a Terran sonic pulse tuned specifically to the Drenkai's nervous system. Not lethal, not loud, just crippling. As the guards screamed and clawed at their ears, Ward walked through them like smoke, planting holodrives in every data chamber. He didn't erase their lies. He buried them beneath Earth's truth. And when the system rebooted, the Drenkai found their entire species archive overwritten with one phrase: "There is no future without remembering who bled for it." Earth. The Council couldn't retaliate. It no longer existed. But even its remnants, small coalitions of stubborn old worlds, still dreamed of resistance. One such group, the Zovari Remnant, launched a blind assault on a Terran convoy near the Orsis Rift. They destroyed 5 Terran transports. No survivors. They celebrated too early, because what came next wasn't a fleet. It was Project Obelisk, a ship unlike any other, roughly the size of a moon, shaped like a spear's edge, entirely black, absorbing light as if space itself bent to obey. The obelisk wasn't manned. It didn't need a crew. It was an autonomous judgment vessel, eye-guided, final protocol only. It arrived in the Zovari system in complete silence. And when it fired, it didn't use missiles or plasma. It used gravitic pulse erosion. Every ship, every base, every station, every floating mineral refinery crumbled, not exploded, not vaporized, disassembled, molecule by molecule, until all that was left was drifting dust and echoes. No sound, no warning, no trace. The message followed, as it always did. Touch Earth again, and you won't die. You'll be forgotten. Hollow. At the edge of the known galaxy, General Taggart initiated a rarely used program, the Afterlight Directive. This wasn't for enemies. This was for humans who forgot why the war began. On a Terran colony known as Ash Point, a radical pro-alien peace cult had formed, advocating disarmament, reintegration with surviving council elements, and forgiveness. Their leader, an ex-intelligence officer named Darren Kresh, claimed Earth's wrath had gone too far. He held peaceful demonstrations, broadcast speeches, condemned the Hollow campaigns. And then, one night, Ash Point's sky cracked open. A single Terran gunship descended, not for combat, for punishment. Operator Grant, now permanently assigned to Hollow internal policing, dragged Kresh from his own pulpit mid-broadcast. The recording was aired across all Terran systems. Kresh, bound, bleeding, whispering, "We were supposed to be better than them." And Grant's voice, clear and ice-cold, "We were. That's why they lost. You speak like a man who never saw what they did to us. So now you'll remember." The camera panned down to a metal branding iron, glowing red, the Earth emblem. It pressed against Kresh's chest. He didn't scream. He just stopped talking. Commander Reich met Grant after the operation. He didn't criticize him. He didn't commend him. He simply said, "Keep the iron ready." And Grant nodded once, silent. The galaxy changed again after Ash Point, not from fear, but from agreement. Species that once condemned Earth now understood, not because they loved humans, but because they saw the alternative. The galaxy without Earth was chaos, but under Earth there was order, brutal, yes, but honest. And in a forgotten region of space, deep beneath a dead red dwarf star, something ancient stirred. A machine race long believed extinct, the Calyx Continuum, intercepted Earth's recent broadcast archive. They didn't panic. They calculated, reviewed Earth's rise from prey to predator, calculated potential threat index. Final result: Humanity is inevitable. Recommendation: do not oppose. Assimilate philosophy. Embrace dominance. Earth had done the impossible, not just survived, not just won. They had made dominance logical. They'd weaponized truth, memory, and trauma, and they'd taught the galaxy a single, unshakable lesson. It's not about how loud you roar, it's about whether anyone survives hearing it. The galaxy had stopped spinning, in all the ways that mattered. Trade routes were quiet. Former warlords were in hiding. Empires, those that still dared to call themselves such, spoke in whispers, glanced over shoulders, and studied every human transmission like it carried a death sentence. Because it often did. But Earth wasn't talking anymore, because Earth had won. And now came the final step, the one everyone feared but few truly understood. Legacy. In the black ice tunnels of Vault Genesis, buried deep under the crust of Mercury's dead sister moon, General Taggart stood before the final piece of the hollow doctrine. The walls pulsed with slow, steady energy, unfiltered, humming like a living thing. No officers, no media, no politicians, just him and the Ark Project. This wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. It was a seed. Inside were 2 million carefully selected Terran genetic templates, not clones, not soldiers, thinkers, builders, survivors, men and women designed for reconstruction, trained from digital wombs to carry Earth's memory to every corner of the stars. The Ark wasn't meant to be launched in war. It was meant for after the war. A rebirth. Taggart keyed in the final activation code. His reflection stared back from the console screen. A face lined with ash-gray stubble, scars deep across his jawline, and eyes that hadn't cried in 4 decades. He was the monster they needed, and he never once regretted that. "Confirm transmission," the AI prompted. He paused, then tapped the final button. Confirmed. The vault lit with cold blue light. Earth's legacy had begun uploading. Elsewhere, Commander Reich walked alone through what used to be the Council Grand Hall. It was just bones now. Cracked pillars, half-melted banners, charred chairs still smelling faintly of plasma burns. He walked past what was left of the Council emblem, shattered on the marble floor, and stopped in front of the dais where judgment had once been handed down on Earth, like a parent punishing a wayward child. He knelt, pulled from his coat a piece of metal, old, rusted, etched with a name almost no one said aloud anymore. Holloway. He placed the tag on the dais and stood back. No words, no prayer, just silence. And then, Reich turned and walked out. The galaxy had begun to follow Earth, but not out of reverence, out of necessity, because Earth had done what the Council never could, made war meaningful again. Every strike Earth delivered carried memory, every punishment, history. They didn't just retaliate, they reminded. Empires that once ruled through pride and tradition now ruled only if Earth allowed it. Some called it fascism, others called it balance. Earth didn't care what they called it. The galaxy had been given every chance to show mercy, to act with reason, to leave the humans alone. And it chose conquest. So Earth chose something worse. Correction. In the aftermath of Project Obelisk, Earth activated the No-Return Protocol, a final order standing doctrine that no Terran blood, under any circumstance, would be spilled again without catastrophic consequence. To enforce it, they placed Sentinel ships at the edge of every known star corridor. AI-driven dreadnoughts with standing orders to erase any fleet that attempted unauthorized movement toward Terran-occupied space. There were no negotiations, no appeals, no debates. The moment a ship crossed the border, it became debris. That was law now. Earth wasn't rebuilding the galaxy. It was replacing it. And then, out of the void, came a whisper no one expected. A ship appeared on Earth's outer relay, damaged, small, and old. Older than anything on record, older than even Earth's oldest surviving vessels. It broadcast one word: home. The vessel was pulled into low orbit, scanned, and quarantined. When the hatch opened, 2 men stepped out. Both human, both wearing Earth emblems not used in over 300 years. The crew of the ESS Pioneer, the first deep space colony ship lost in what had once been the Council's restricted expansion zones, presumed destroyed. They had survived, hidden, hunted, changed. And now they had returned. Commander Reich met them himself. One of the men, gray-haired, eyes dim from radiation exposure, saluted weakly. "I never thought we'd see Earth again." Reich didn't salute back. He stepped forward and took the man's shoulder in his hand. "You didn't come back to the Earth you left." The old man nodded. "We heard the rumors." He looked down at Earth's massive defense fleet orbiting below. "You won, didn't you?" Reich looked through the viewport. Quiet, then said, "We didn't win. We survived better than they did." A memorial was built. Not for the dead, but for the forgotten. All those Terran colonies erased by the Council, all the soldiers marked as missing, when really they were buried in orbit, nameless and alone. The structure floated above Earth's moon, encased in crystal armor, visible from every hemisphere. It didn't carry names, just a phrase: "They erased us. We became fire." General Taggart retired 2 months later. No parade, no statue, just silence. He walked into a deep-range vessel and took one last look at the Earth he'd fought for. Then he left. Destination: undisclosed. Some said he went to the burned zones. Some said he planned to die alone. Others said he never existed at all, that Taggart was a myth. But the hollow patch appeared again, weeks later, on a derelict alien station in the Varnathi grave belt, splattered with new blood. So maybe the old man just wasn't finished yet. The Council never reformed. Not because it couldn't, but because no one would dare suggest leading a galaxy that belonged to Earth. Instead, systems began adopting Terran principles, sometimes forcefully, sometimes voluntarily. Terran Standard Time, Terran judicial models, Terran language, Terran currency. One race, the Helith, rewrote their constitution to place humanity at the top of their pantheon, not because they were conquered, but because they believed. The final act of the Terran military doctrine wasn't an invasion. It was a transmission. One simple message, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. It played once every cycle, in every known language. No introduction, no threat. Just one calm, unwavering male voice. "We are not gods. We are not devils. We are not conquerors. We are memory. We are what happens when you bury the wrong species. We remember. We avenge. We build. This is Earth. And this time, we are not going away." And across the stars, no one moved. No one replied. They just watched the Earth emblem rotate slowly on their screens. Black and white, a circle with a flame inside. The flame never went out, and the galaxy never tried again. Because now they understood what Earth had always been: the end of silence, the end of mercy, the beginning of consequence.